Hi guys, welcome to the Fox and Burger podcast. I'm your co-host Fox,
And I am the other co-host, Burger.
and in today's episode, we have a very special guest today, Kofu Lion. Kofu is originally from Taiwan and later moved to the States, later obtaining his U.S. citizenship. He's actually a personal friend of mine, so I'm very much honored to have him on the show. I did want to mention that he was also one of the interpreters for the Infurnity staff during the Infurnity online convention, the virtual convention that they had last year in October. He served as one of the interpreters for the Q&A session with Uncle Kage, and I do believe, someone had to correct me, I do believe the Infurnity staff, they do have that stream uploaded to their YouTube channel, so if you want to check out that Q&A session with Uncle Kage and with Kofu's interpretation, feel free to do so. Again, I just want to mention that Kofu is a personal friend of mine and is, very much. I think we've been friends for a few years by now, and is very much an honor to have you on the show.
Thank you so much.
Well, as always, we definitely need to know who you are. So who are you? What do you do? And how did you get into the fandom?
So my name is Kofu. I got into the fandom because of a random search online that I find out a fursuiter's name Tinduru, and he has been posting and hosting a lot of fursuit videos on his personal site. It's called Fursuit Archive. I think it's still up. And since then, I just kind of dived down into the furry fandom because the fursuit aspect of it. And of course, like everyone else, I like cartoon and like anthropomorphic animal characters like Bugs Bunny, Mickey Mouse, and I think the biggest drive for me to be a part of a fandom was Lion King. So I have a lion persona because of the movie Lion King. I would say moving on from being a Lion King fan to becoming a furry was really finding out all the fursuit videos on Tinduru's website.
So when would you say that happened? I just want to cut in that like when would you say that, if you can put like a year to the to the time that you say, okay, yes, I'm definitely a furry, like what year would that be?
I'm guessing maybe around 2003, 2004. If I move over to America, I already kind of sort of know about furry, but just it was a very distant word. Like, oh, I know some people are doing this kind of stuff, but it has nothing to do with me, and I kind of forgot about it. That was back in Taiwan. Right. And it was really until, I really think it's 2003, 2004, that I find out about the website and kind of pick it up again and find out, oh, well, there's actually people in my state that that I live share this kind of interest as well.
We all find some sort of media that inspired us to create our personas, like Kofu with Lion King, Fox with, as mentioned in the previous podcast, Zootopia.
That's right.
And of course, I'm a big Barnyard fan. I'm kidding.
Sorry to say this, I haven't really seen Barnyard.
It was an American cartoon, 3D animated, back in the mid-2000s. It was on, well, it started as a movie, but then it went on to Nickelodeon.
Back at the Barnyard, right?
Yeah. You're not missing much.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, I remember, I actually have not seen the full movie, but I have seen a lot of the episodes, believe it or not, of the show.
I remember the main characters, okay, sorry to say this, I don't really understand the gender. I think it's a cow, but with a guy's voice.
No, you know what? People get that all the time with cartoons. It doesn't matter if it's a cow or a bull. People are just going to assign a male or female gender to a cow just because cows are more prominent on farms, I guess, than bulls.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, I want to swing the mic back to Kofu and ask him a question that I feel like may pop up in our viewers' minds. So what's the history behind your name? I mean, I think it's a little bit obvious, but just to let us know.
Sure. So my name Kofu, Kofu, came out as a mistake that I took off from a Lion King character. whose name is
Right.
Kovu, Kovu. So what happened was back in 1984, no, that was the actual Lion King. 1989, that was the second movie of the Lion King came out on VHS. So back in Taiwan, my parents bought a VHS, and of course the movie was for children, and the subtitles are all in Chinese. There's no English subtitle, even though the characters are speaking in English. In Taiwanese, the subtitle reads Gaofu, so it doesn't really translate the sound that well. And listening to the name of the character in the movie, it sounds like Kofu, so it's just like, oh, okay, I like this character. I'm gonna be a dark-skinned lion, and just call myself Kofu, not knowing the actual spelling was Kovu.
Yeah, I think the V sound doesn't really exist in Mandarin languages.
Especially, this is I'm ashamed to be saying this, being a Lion King fan. I can't remember if this was a Swahili or Zulu, so it's not even. I don't even know if Kovu, the V, is pronounceable in English even, but I could be wrong.
True. Well, tell us more about your Fursona then? Like, does he have a backstory? I mean, for me, I've obviously seen the Fursona, but like, just for Burger's sake and for the audience sake, can you describe him? Like, what is he like? Is he based off of you? That kind of stuff.
The character Kofu was, I don't really have a backstory for it, so
Sure.
I got the name, but the character really came out from a birthday present I got from a friend back in Taiwan. Her name is Aji, and she drew a Fursona for me without knowing is a Fursona is just a character, but it's basically a dark-skinned lion with a really messy mane, green eyes, and green iris and yellow eyeballs. Something like that, just kind of like a different version of Kovu coming out from the movie with a different mane or hairstyle, if you call that.
So what I want to know is, since you've been in the fandom since like the early to mid 2000s, what is your perspective on any differences between how it was back then and how it is now?
When I first joined the fandom, it was everyone behaved like a big family. It was very united, and not to say people aren't like a family today, but people are definitely more inclusive back then compared to what we have today.
Just to clarify, you're talking about like the U.S. side of the fandom, right?
Correct.
Gotcha. That's important to make a note.
Yeah, because we kind of sort of had a fandom back in Taiwan when JC built a discussion board or forum online, and we just discuss and share furry characters, but nothing really as far as activities or any socialization. There's none of that in Taiwan. But in US, the furry culture was already developed, so I was able to be a part of that already established social interaction group, and just kind of went from there. So the reason why I said it was more inclusive back then was because I went to my very first FurMIT after talking to my friend Fox Todd for quite a while, and I got to meet him for the first time at a FurMIT. And at the same time, I was able to meet other furries over there, and at the end of the meet, because the location was about an hour and a half, 2 hour drive away from where I live, some people actually stayed nearby the FurMIT overnight at the hotel, and I was questioning if I could be a part of that, if I could stay overnight so I could hang out with people the next day. They did not say things like, "Oh, we don't know you, so goodbye." It wasn't like that before, but I feel this type of attitude or less inclusiveness is more today because there are more concerns today.
I definitely know about people who have come to the Arlington FurryMIT when I was still back in Texas. There would be people who would drive from, what was it, like Houston, all the way up to Texas, or at least around the Houston area, just to see more furries to hang out with.
So they would drive from Houston all the way up to Arlington.
Yeah, basically.
Wow, that's just to give our viewers, how would that be, like, what, 5 hours minimum?
You can get from the Houston area to the Dallas area well within 3.5 to 4 hours.
That's insane, man. You guys are fast drivers. I don't know, Kofu, you might like road trips more than me, because, like, isn't it getting from Dallas to Austin, like, I thought that took at least an hour and a half, or like 2 hours, possibly 3.
It's about the same amount of driving time, actually.
Wow. Oh, okay, good to know.
2 to 3 hours for me, that's if it's a day trip, it's doable, but it's not a short distance either.
Sure. You'll have to remind me, like, you're based on the East Coast, right? Aren't you in NC? Is that right?
I'm in North Carolina right now.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that explains why you were able to meet up with Dr. Kage.
Yeah, he moved over here, let's say maybe less than 10 years, but about 10 years now, I think.
Oh, he's based in North Carolina now?
Yeah.
Oh, I had no idea. Okay, sure, cool. Yeah, that would explain it. That would definitely explain it.
Sounds like you should pay more attention to his story hours.
Yeah. I think I really only listened to about a couple, and I know for sure I've listened to the Infurnity Online one, but that might have been the only one I've like listened to from beginning to end, to be told.
Yeah, his story hours are pretty amazing, and he's also a wonderful storyteller who could not only he have interesting encounters in life, but he also able to tell. He is able to give descriptions on daily events that could make it very interesting for his listener and audience.
It's essentially the kind of skills you need to be a good stand-up comedian or storyteller. Yeah, right. Basically.
I definitely like the clarity in his voice, in his speech. He's not necessarily mumbling. He has a certain logic that's pretty easy to follow, and not only that, but he does it in an entertaining way, which is a great combination.
Absolutely, and yeah, he's very great at storytelling. A good organizer. It's an honor to have him in the same state with us.
So I kind of want to piggyback on that topic. So. What was your experience like then for interpreting with Kage? Like how did you feel? What kind of preparation did you do? So could you speak about like your experience in regards to the Infurnity Online Q&A event?
First of all, I'm pretty new to actually translating anything for a professional event, and on top of the thrill, I'm actually kind of frightening at the same time, because Michael probably, Mike might know this, that when you translate for people, especially English to Chinese, Chinese to English, there's a lot of things that could be lost in translation. So say like translating just on the surface of the word, meaning of the word, is not enough to cut it. So in addition, I have to provide like a few more words to explain things on top of the words that I'm saying. So my interpretation with Kage was actually practiced a little bit before we went live that day. I have to make sure the questions that he was being asked and his answers are that I could explain in a way that people could actually understand as a Chinese speaker and Chinese user.
So I'm kind of curious about the prep work that you had to do with like before you had to actually do the interpretation. I was talking to Shu about this just very briefly over Telegram. He's also one of the just for the audience sake, he's one of the interpreters slash translators for Infurnity. Matter of fact, I would say he's like the head translator. And Shu was telling me that there was kind of like a script already in place, so you didn't necessarily have to like translate everything from scratch. I guess like you could already be prepared. So can you verify if that was true, or and like how did that help you?
Oh, that was most definitely true, and it really helped me out a lot. So it comes back to we talked about having to know the questions ahead of time and know what Kage's answer ahead of time in order to put it down in text. And then I took it with Shu and actually JC as well, and discussed what would be the best way to actually using these words in speaking tone so it will sound interesting and formal instead of just random pieces of words. So Shu actually helped me a lot on this, because my both my English and Chinese are kind of poor right now, so he had to give a lot of input on like, okay, you want to use this type of word, or you don't want to say this, and you can definitely use a better words like that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. I was just going to say that that's something that I hear from people who are bilingual or polyglots learning new languages, is that occasionally you just forget how to operate a certain language sometimes. Mm-hmm. It's just like, oh, I know this word in this language, but I need to speak this language. So you're kind of stuck with your limited memory bank space.
Right, like there's way too many times that I understand a phrase in English or Chinese, but if you want me to translate full on what it means with the proper words, I don't think I could do that on the flight.
Yeah, I'm just amazed that there are people that can do that. And I mean, I've met people that can do that. And it's just weird that it seems so natural for them to have something go in one ear and then quickly process it and then spit it out in a language that the listener can comprehend.
Yeah. Well, I definitely, I remember talking to a little bit off topic, but I remember you and I, Berger, were talking to Carbon. He's I guess you could say he's like the main interpreter for FurPoint. I was very much impressed by his ability. I wasn't there to hear him do his interpreting, but he mentioned that he did run into some difficulties with interpreting, and for him it was mainly with going from Chinese to English. I'm sorry, no, it was English to Chinese. And he's quite a young person. He's very smart, and I'm the same with you. I'm very impressed by his ability. Like he said that, like, he even said himself that was like probably his first time acting as like a professional interpreter, like for interpreting what I think was like first science people to the audience. And I'm very impressed myself. Yeah, I'm very impressed, like to have that kind of like memory bank, to use a phrase that you just used, and be able to deliver a message that is coherent to kind of sound a little bit more linguistically inclined, like that's like coherent in the target culture or the target language. Because I think that when you interpret or translate, you have to make choices. You can either localize / domesticate your words, or you can foreignize your words. So you can either do like literal or more local translations, literal or more loose translations, I should say. And when you're interpreting, though, when you're on the spot, that's different from translation, where translation is usually that's generally speaking that's for written. Like strictly speaking, translation is for written, but interpreting is for oral. And those kinds of people, though, interpreters, they do need to be able to think on the spot. So I want to go back to the Q&A session that Kofu was the interpreter for, and I wanted to say that, man, when I was listening to Uncle Kage's English, I'm an English native speaker, so of course I'm going to understand that very well. So what I did was I took special attention to what Kofu said, because Kofu was the one interpreting into Chinese, and I thought that was amazing. I think again you guys did have like a little bit. You guys had like a kind of like a script that you're playing off of, but I was extremely impressed. With how Kofu handled the Chinese. I really felt like you hit on a bunch of the topics that Uncle Kage was talking about, and these kinds of things are difficult to explain. This is not like basic Chinese where you're saying like ni hao and xie xie. Like these are like complex ideas that you kind of have to you have to first understand what they mean in English and then try to find the Chinese equivalent. Like you need to be able to understand like the content of what he's saying in the first place, and then you put that into Chinese.
I think a big part of that was Uncle Kage. Being Uncle Kage, he probably was already being asked the same question over and over again by so many different people in the fandom. So he have bottom line answers to them all, and sure. So we got an answer from Uncle Kage pretty quickly, and I took the advantage of Uncle Kage being here, that I was able to look for him and discuss with him, like if this type of translation and the meaning of it in Chinese is proper or anything like that. Make sure nothing gets lost in translation, and of course talking with Shu and making sure my Kage's point is actually made when it translates to Chinese. So everyone's helping. And what you saw was the result of a show, and unless you're running solo, otherwise the show is produced by a bunch of people. So it's really the collaborative of work.
I suppose in a way, language itself is also basically cooperative, because you're just exchanging ideas from one person to another, or one party to another party. It doesn't just have to be two people. It could be a whole group. It could be a stream of one person being watched by other people. It's all sorts of mediums.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm still very new to verbal translation, or you say interpreting, and also recording and learning how each program works. They're all very new to me. And Uncle Kage being here, he has done videos on YouTube for a very long time, so he was able to take care of that without any issues. So that was great.
And just kind of a follow-up question, not necessarily related to, I guess, the fandom, but in your position, I really feel like you have a great sort of background, and maybe you could even say experience, because you're originally from Taiwan and then you moved to the States, and so you kind of have this dual perspective, and also you're bilingual. So have you ever thought about? I feel like we talked about this once, but have you ever thought about doing work into the field of translation or interpreting, or has that ever crossed your mind, since you've been in the States?
Yeah, definitely. But I'm also the type of person that I really self-doubt a lot, so I haven't really looked too much into it, and I feel to be able to work in this field, what a person needs is more than just being able to listen and speak the language. The person will probably need a lot more skill than what I just said. So beyond that, I don't know if I could do it, but if there's such job and I can find it, I definitely would be interested to give it a try. There are some people said the field of interpretation is just kind of like interpreting for a friend on a casual conversation. I don't know if that's true or not. If it is true, I guess it will be a lot easier, but if it isn't, then it proves the point that I guess it requires a certain skill set that I don't think I have just yet.
Is part of that just your public speaking skills as well?
There's that. I don't think I have a public speaking skill, to be honest. I can do interpersonal conversations individually, but if you want me to give a speech in front of audience, I will run short with words, and my tone is not convincing, and those are the skills I don't have just yet that I think it's very much needed when you do interpretation work.
What all training do you have in either languages? Is it just something you pick up once you get to a new country or a new place, or is there some sort of academic or professional training that you go through? Like what was your journey in learning English?
My journey in learning English was really just my middle school and high school English class back in Taiwan, and then everything else that I just kind of picked up in the country and in the U.S. Well, when I first got here, I had to go through ESL class, English for second language class.
Was that for high school, or was that like
community college? So like in between high school and college level.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah, it wasn't really a language school, but it's a place. It's a place that they provide classes. You can kind of build up your English skill enough that you can actually take the college course. So there was that. Mm-hmm. Some English class, that like English 101, 200 level of class, that kind of stuff in college. But everything else is just like chatting with friends online or talking with friends in person that I picked up. So honestly, I don't really have any professional training as far as the polishing the language or how I get where I am today, really.
I had something pop up in my mind just now. I was just curious, like, how did you feel when you were able to finally watch The Lion King in English, but then finally able to understand like basically everything that was said? Because if I'm not mistaken, you mentioned that you were watching it with Chinese subs back in Taiwan, but like, you know, was there a day where you actually decided to just, okay, you know, now that I can speak English, or now that my proficiency is higher, let me just rewatch this movie because it's awesome? Like, did you ever have that moment?
Maybe not so much with Lion King, but definitely with songs. Like songs I hear as a kid, like Michael Jackson songs.
Mm-hmm. Like Thriller?
Maybe. I could definitely pick up a little bit more words without reading the lyrics. But of course, if you were to, there are still songs, if you were to hearing it today, because the complexity of the song and the words they're choosing to put in the song, there's no way you can pick up the lyrics without actually reading the text. So I'll give you that. But I definitely was able to pick up some words from songs I've been singing along with, and understand, why this is what they're actually saying in the song that I didn't realize before as a kid. But I haven't really gone back to watch the same movie, not because I don't want to do that, but really because it haven't really came across my mind. And funny thing that you mentioned it, I guess both Lightning and Michael, both of you understand this. There's not a lot of movies that have captions in America unless you purposely turn it on. But if you were to watch movies in Taiwan, guess what? There's captions in every single movie.
So that's the same case in mainland China as well. There are separate screenings for movies that have, maybe it's like a Marvel or a Disney movie, and they have one screening where it's English voice acting and Chinese subtitles, and there's a different screening on a different time slot or a different theater where it is Chinese voice acting and maybe English subtitles.
Interesting.
So it sounds like the movie translation was produced by a different company in different region, even though the movie is released in the same country.
Yeah, basically.
That is very interesting. But my point is, because there's no actual subtitle you can read in American movies, so
Right.
you can only pick up by listening. And just like reading a novel, as a foreigner who comes to America, there's no chance that I'll understand the full content of conversations or text by just reading the whole thing, because it doesn't work that way. There's no way I understand already know all the words that I do not know of. But you were able to pick up between the lines to know the story and just move along. That's how I studied back in college, and that's how I've been learning things in the movies and things in the novel. So I guess if I went to go back to watch the same movie again without having a subtitle, that's probably the most I could get. Unless I turn the subtitle on, then I'll be like, oh, here's what happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you definitely hit the nail on the head with that one. I think this speaks to the linguistic differences in the languages, the differences between Chinese and English, where in Chinese, because of things like homonyms, words that have the same pronunciation but mean different things. I can't think of a specific example right now, but to kind of clarify, which word you're actually saying. I know in the Chinese language, it's much more needed. Like subtitles are much more needed because you need to actually look at the character, because the character will determine the meaning. Otherwise, like you might think it might be another character, but really it should be this character. And I think that happens more in Chinese than it does in English. And so I noticed that like basically like almost any like modern film with Chinese as its main language, or some Chinese dialects, like it could be a Hong Kong movie, right? Like they'll have subtitles. Like almost any like modern movie will featuring the Chinese language will have subtitles. And then so like that is true. Like if you're trying to learn Chinese, you do have the advantage of okay, you can kind of rely on the characters. You can rely on the subtitles to kind of get the context. But if you're watching a movie in English, most of the time you're not going to have subtitles on. Like I would say like a vast majority of the time, really. I don't know why people don't prefer to have it on. Maybe it's because it's distracting. As a kid, I actually did turn on the subtitles. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I just like to double check what they're saying. But as I grew older, like I realized like maybe it's because we're all native speakers, right? Like I grew up in the States, so like we're all native speakers. We kind of know what words should be said and what words aren't going to be said, and the chances of running into those homonyms, homophones. I think homophones. Running into those homophones. The chances of running into those homophones are much less in English.
Yeah, I think what's interesting as well, if I could drop right in, is that I was at either a restaurant or a bar, and there was like a movie playing on the TV screen, and he was here in Taiwan, but it had the simplified Chinese subtitles. And someone I was hanging out with who knew English and I was having a decent conversation with was like, basically they explained to me that even though it's different, like with simplified and traditional, like there's a good chance that Taiwanese people can read both simplified and traditional. It's just that they use, I guess, traditional characters more often here in Taiwan.
Yeah, traditional character, I think it's a national language or written language that we use in Taiwan. And coming back to, I don't know, it's very interesting. Like, it doesn't take a whole lot for people who learned traditional Chinese to learn the simplified, because simplified, most of the time when you actually look at it, it's just a selection of part of a word that comes off from the traditional written Chinese, which if you already know how a word is written, then it's really not hard to pick up just left off the parts being cut off. And back in school, we actually use a lot of simplified Chinese to take notes because our teacher just go on and on and on without stopping. So it makes it really makes easier to just take notes in simplified Chinese.
Yeah.
But
I saw that too.
I love that.
Yeah, I saw that on Quora. So someone posted that they actually wrote simplified Chinese, even if they're living in Taiwan. They did it because it's like a faster way of taking notes.
Right, but on the test you will never see a simplified Chinese. You actually get points taken if you do that.
Oh dang!
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah, I never studied simplified myself. I'm one of those weirdos that even despite learning Chinese, like I started learning Chinese in the States, and just a short anecdote, I actually asked my teacher if I could learn traditional, and she said, okay, sure, but just keep in mind most of the class material is going to be in simplified, so you'll just have to buy the traditional version. It actually went okay for me. I remember one time, like when we were taking a test, she forgot to print out the traditional version of the test, because it was only me. There's only one student who wanted to learn traditional in the class, and so she just forgot. And then she said, oh, sorry, I forgot to print out the traditional version, Michael. Here, let me just convert the simplified to traditional, and then let me put the test on the projector. So literally I took my test through the projector. Like everyone else had like a paper copy, and like I had the simplified copy, but I was writing down my answers in traditional. Like I had to look at the projector, and I actually had to tell the teacher, can you scroll down like on the documents, to page 2 or whatever, so I can continue reading or whatever. So like, yeah, I remember I can't believe my teacher, and she's from mainland China too. She let me do that. She didn't really care. So let's just say she was definitely nice to me.
You don't really run into a whole lot of people like that.
I think it's just because there's a bigger market for learning the simplified and the mainland version of Chinese. But like for someone like me who wanted to go to Taiwan and try to figure out more the traditional characters, trying to find the material to learn traditional rather than simplified, especially on like online or through a phone app, it's like very difficult to actually find something that fits that need, just because there's a much bigger need to learn the simplified version, I suppose.
And it's really funny when you look at the calligraphy back in the days, or even today, no one's writing calligraphy in simplified Chinese, but that will be involved with some political stuff that I'm not sure if we're ready to discuss here.
Right.
I think when, at least back in school, my classmates, they don't like to turn on subtitles because when, like you said, Michael, when people watch movies, they want to be able to focus. I guess with subtitles on the screen, it takes a part of the screen away, and some people actually hate it.
As someone who's watched tons of anime online, having to watch it with Japanese voice acting and English subtitles, they can learn and they can deal with it.
True. Yeah, I'm definitely one of those who's like I'm definitely used to. I'm a guy who watches like a decent amount of anime myself. I actually like both. I actually like both the English dub and then English subs. But I do think that like it takes some time to get used to, but eventually you do get used to it. I did want to kind of shift our focus back to the furry fandom and kind of ask a question related to that, and that is, so for Kofu, you've been in the fandom for a very long time, right? Like we're talking like 15 plus years, and so I'm actually just curious, how many cons have you attended total, and can you name the cons, like all the cons you've attended?
Oh my god, I actually did not I never actually counted the cons I attended. Like some people put it on their FA and just like keep a counter on it. I don't do that. But I can tell you I started going to cons back in 2006, and Further Confusion 2006 was my very first con.
Wow, California.
Yeah, isn't it weird?
Did you live there before?
Never, and
Oh.
never. That's my first con, and the reason why I did that was because, do you remember I mentioned the Tinduru in the very first part of this podcast? That I found out fursuit videos. Tinduru actually lives in France, and at the time, I find out he only had the time to go to further confusion. It's usually happened in January in a year. So I wanted to meet him. So that's why I went to further confusion as my very first con, even though it's very far away from East Coast. I had a good time, and I met up with people and eventually becoming friends with. And back to the East Coast and starting to talk to local friends, that I realized, other than the big cons, there are actually some regional cons nearby North Carolina I could go to. So I ventured out. Then I went to MFM. It's Memphis FurryMIT, and it was in Memphis in Tennessee at the time. Where else have I been? Went to FWA, of course, and went up to Anthrocon. So to give you a perspective, driving distance from North Carolina down to Atlanta for FWA is about 6 hours, and to Memphis, Tennessee is about 12, and up to Anthrocon is about 8 hours. They're not exactly short distance, but they are the events that I could drive to without actually flying. I worked in Disney for a little bit down in Orlando, so of course I went to Megaplex in Orlando for a little bit.
Ah, gotcha.
And what else? I went to, at the time there's a King Eliot's live event. The host was in Orlando, so there was one more furry event over there, and they took their event out of the state and actually hosted in Vegas a couple of times, and I was able to visit Vegas once for that event. I went to EF, went to Infurnity, and of course MFF in Chicago. I guess that's about it, and there are maybe some other cons I'm forgetting right now.
Out of that gigantic list, I hate to do this to you, but which con would you say is your favorite, or that would you say you like the most? And you could take some time to think about it.
Oh, on top of it, there's FA United and local con BRFF. But anyway, any con that I was able to meet with friends and have a good time, those are the best cons I had. So I cannot really pinpoint a particular con for you to answer this question. But I can tell you, the bigger the con is, the more chance you get to run into people that you know and you want to hang out with. But at the same time, the bigger con kind of dilute your attention and shift your attention away, that you could probably only spend a very small amount of time with people you want to spend with. And smaller events actually have that advantage. If you find a person you want to hang out with, you could actually spend a good chunk of time and just catch up where you left off, or if you want to simply just relax with people you want to spend time with.
That's interesting to hear. I think the most interesting kind of experience I have for a convention is when Texas Furry Fiesta. I started going to Texas Furry Fiesta back in 2011, and
oh wow, that's a long time.
Like watching it grow from about, I don't know, 1,200 attendees in a Crown Plaza in Addison, Texas, all the way to, like, is it a Hyatt?
Yeah, was it
Hyatt Regency?
Marriott?
Yeah, Hyatt Regency.
Hyatt Regency. Gotcha.
Like, it has gotten so big since I started going there, like 10 years ago with this upcoming month.
Right.
Man, and now a lot of the more popular furries are coming down to TFF 2 as well. Yeah. Like, I didn't imagine that someone like Majira or any of these newer popular TikTok furries would be coming down all the way to Texas just to go to a convention, but like
That's right.
they've decided to come to TFF.
I kind of brought this up to Michael a bit ago when we talk about like having Infurnity in Taiwan, and to me that feels like when you guys live back in the States, when you have a popular person who is on a concert tour, the person may skip a few states, but if the person hits like Southeast Asia as a country, then you know for sure Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, those places will definitely be hit. So to have an advantage of running an event in Taiwan is that maybe here in the States that if you have an event, not everyone or people you want to meet will be able to go to your event, even if it's right in your home state. But in Taiwan, because I don't know what's the correct term for it, it narrows down for people on the list for them. So if they want to go to Infurnity in Taiwan, you get to meet them.
Yeah, I think you're speaking to basically like if I'm understanding correctly, you're kind of speaking to like the size of the country, perhaps like how Taiwan is much smaller than a state, so like like if you're going to if that Popular, or I think you're mentioning band, right? If they're like on a band on a concert tour if they're going to like Taiwan, since it's a smaller country, it's easier to get people from that country to go and see their event or something like that. And then like I think like for even smaller countries like like Singapore, which is literally a city state, right? It's very easy with good public transit over there, and of course even in Taiwan there's good public transit, but the size of the country and good public transit, kind of those two together really help with like getting people to see those people coming from abroad.
Yeah, definitely.
If it wasn't for the trains and the high-speed rail, I wouldn't have never made it to FurMIT.
How was it? I'm very curious about it because I think it's in Tainan, which is my home city.
Oh, okay.
I forgot your Taiwanese.
I liked it a lot.
Sorry, go ahead.
So like they picked an interesting area in Tainan. Do you know the Anping district?
Yes, precisely, yes.
Yeah, so they picked a Marriott in the Anping, and this hotel is it's very nice. It's in a
5
very
stars.
touristy area. Yeah. Good luck finding any nearby restaurants.
Is it out in the middle of nowhere?
I wouldn't say it's in the middle of nowhere. It's just there's not much in walking distance. Or you could basically just get something from Uber Eats or Food Panda, but like there's not that experience of ditching the con for an hour and hanging out with your friends at a Denny's or whatever.
So kind of like Infurnity, if Infurnity is a little further away from the touristy spot.
Kind of, but Infurnity, like Damshui itself is still kind of touristy, but it's definitely not downtown Taipei.
Right. And Anping itself is a touristy town, so I guess the location of hotel isn't right next to where the touristy spots at. But I'm glad you guys are able, Lightning, you're able to visit Tainan for the event, and I hope you guys had a good time.
Yeah, I was just glad to go to a furry convention. Out of all of the countries that I have had the chance to live in, I think Taiwan has been the best in this year to go to a convention or to do anything outside of your house.
Absolutely.
I really don't know when cons gonna be back, when we're gonna have normal cons again in America.
I'm pretty glad that I had both Texas Furry Fiesta and HarmonyCon to enjoy during all of February before everyone just started shutting down their conventions due to COVID-19 regulations. Not that I'm mad about the regulations. I completely understand that aspect.
Yeah, those are important. You don't want people to go to your event and catch up something and then people will be unhappy or potentially put people in life-threatening situation.
Surprisingly, I'm not sure if you heard, but it was, Kaohsiung Tea Party had to postpone until next year.
I think I saw something like that.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. The day before they made that announcement, I was put into like a Facebook Messenger group chat of a whole bunch of other furries who were looking for roommates to go down to Kaohsiung for that weekend. And then, like the day later, I wake up, everyone's screaming, "Oh my god, I can't believe it's canceled!" I was like, wait, what happened?
It's stable, like a COVID situation is stable enough. People can actually planning events. Until recently, there's small spikes in individual cases.
Right, yeah. There was like that one New Zealand doctor, I think, who had later tested positive.
I break such a good record right there.
Yeah, for both countries, I guess.
There is one topic left that we haven't really hit yet, and something that is to the core of this podcast, and that is one of the reasons why we made this podcast is to sort of like bridge the Asian and the Western fandoms, and in particular we're kind of trying to focus on the Asian side of the fandom, or at least people from that side, because we think that there's a lot of stuff and a lot of activities, there are a lot of conventions going on in the Asian side of the fandom, but I think a lot of people in the West don't know about or may not understand. I know, for example, that people may know about JMOF because that's probably the number one, I guess, like Asian FurCon in their opinion. But I know there are other there are obviously other Asian cons out there, like Infurnity, for example. And so kind of like in the spirit of like the goal of the podcast, I wanted to ask you, Kofu, like as someone who grew up in Taiwan, later moved to the States, like what are some like the differences or and similarities that you see between the fandoms on both sides? It's kind of a loaded question, so I mean, take your time to think, but it's something that or at least for me, something I'm very much interested in.
I think for the similarity, I guess everyone share the same interest. There's no doubt of that. I think the cons in the U.S. or people here in general, I guess they also touch base of the cultural differences. Is that I feel U.S. cons or the fandom in the U.S. focus more on individual creativity, where a lot of the characters were self-made. I'm not talking about fursuit, just character itself. It could be crappy, it could be beautiful, but regardless, people like to create their own character. And only like I came up with a red fox with 3 tails and pink hair. That belongs to me, and I created it. And the person who owns that Fursona is proud of that, and doesn't really treat it like a child or a different entity. And I feel in Taiwan and maybe other parts like Japan, self-created characters seem to be a little less. That doesn't mean people are less creative, but I guess people are more in the habit of buying a character as a product, and that definitely happens a lot in the fursuit world over there. But I'm not sure if that's the case with Fursonas. But yeah, I guess you guys know about characters that's pre-made, and if you want to buy a character sheet and then the fursuit maker will make it into a fursuit, that kind of stuff. You don't really see a whole lot of that in America. So I think that's major cultural differences that I see in between the countries. And coming back to similarities, as a fandom with people who share the same interest, every time you go to an event, it feels like school reunion, even though I guess one doesn't really go back to a school reunion all that often or every other month. But it really does feel like that, and you may not know furry personally, but you definitely hear about the furry either online or in the distance at an event. Just like if you were to go back to school reunion, you may know someone from a different class by hearing his or her name and not really knowing about them personally, but you do know this person exists. It happens a lot in the fandom. But I think that what the fandom provides is that it creates community space for people to meet up, and instead of continuously idolizing each other as celebrity. So I think that's the similarity in both Western and Eastern. It creates a space for people to be able to meet each other and understand that this is a hobby, and underneath the character or a fursuit, there's a real person underneath it. If you realize that we're all just people like to make friends with each other with an interest.
As much as I would like to talk more about the International Asian Convention experience, that might be for another podcast because we're running a little low on time right now. So, Kofu, if you want to plug anything, if you want to give us your social media, anything that you want to show to the audience, go ahead and speak now.
Okay, I do have a Twitter account. If anyone would like to follow me and want me to follow back, it is Kofu Kitty, Kitty. Kofu Kitty is my Twitter account. And I just want to add one last piece of my advice, that at the end of the day, we're all just people behind our avatar. So be it that you want to be a popular figure in the fandom, or if you already are, be nice to everyone, because we're all sharing the same interest, and let's keep this awesome furry culture continue.
I think that's exactly the kind of mentality I think everyone should have. So thank you for joining us, Kofu. Glad to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So this has been the Fox and Burger podcast. I have been Burger.
And I'm Fox.
All right. See you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.